Thank you everybody for joining. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to meet here with us and talk a little Google and talk about some of the new exciting tools that are out there. Obviously, uh, the Google Workspace ecosystem is continuing to provide a ton of value to customers of all shapes and sizes. And we're going to talk to you a little today about some of the tools that we've vetted, that we have a personal experience with, that we use on a day-to-day basis, that has not only made our lives and our jobs here easier, but it's really helped us to improve everything from security to operational efficiencies. So hopefully you'll enjoy what you see here and would like to discuss more. We're available to discuss more. We'll get started real quick with who's going to be presenting. Myself, my name is Joey Maller. I'm the VP of Sales and Alliances here at Upcurve Cloud. You'll also be hearing from Brandon Ferreira and Taylor Grandstaff, as well as Paul Lees a little bit later on. And we'll be presenting a couple of different items to you. Now, before we jump into the tools, I wanted to just give you guys a quick little recap of some of the new updates that have been rolled out recently in case you're not up to date on some of the new features. Expect to see a new UI or a new interface rolling out here over the next couple weeks. Google is going to be releasing this in different batches, but really it's probably the first UI refresh that's come out in a long time. You'll see that it's going to be a little more consolidated than the current UI is, because there's really a heavy focus on making everything accessible from one single pane. So you'll have your email, you'll have your chat, you'll have your spaces and your Google Meet all within one central UI, so that you don't have to tab or hop tabs or hop screens. So everything is going to be in this nice consolidated view. So expect to see this rolling out to your domain within the next couple weeks to month. Another great update that's recently been rolled out in general availability are Google Drive labels. So similar to email labels, you can categorize different type of drive files depending on what you feel is the best way for your organization to keep things organized. You can see some examples here, having files with the label restricted or confidential, or maybe you have files that are labeled marketing team. Using these labels to create an organized file structure is becoming really, really popular. If you need help or want to explore more, just reach out to your customer success manager. And something new that's been rolled out recently and updated that is part of Google Meet, which is companion mode. So this allows you to have Google Meet more as a presentation type of platform. It allows you to obviously do screen share, chat, raise your hand. You can have Q&A, you can have polls, you can get a summary of the Q&A and polls after the meeting. You can record the meeting. So a lot of features are being added to Meet. You've already seen some new features, but there are going to be a lot of additional features coming out here pretty soon over the next few months. So without further ado, let's jump into why you guys are here, and that is to discuss the top 3 tools that every Google Workspace admin and frankly every Google Workspace user should be aware of. As I mentioned earlier, these are 3 tools that we've vetted, we've used for a long time, and we feel very confident in their abilities to provide value. These aren't just 3 random tools that we've selected for the sake of doing a webinar. These are actual tools that we believe in, we use here, and we want to provide the best value to you guys as Google Workspace customers, and make sure that you're aware of all the tools that are available to help your organization stay compliant, stay up to date, stay organized, and be at the cutting edge of new technology. So the 3 tools that we're going to be discussing today are AFI.ai, which is a backup archiving tool, Virtru, which is an encryption tool for email and for drive files, and then we'll round it out with Patronum, which is an advanced admin management tool. And we're lucky enough to have Paul Lees, who is the creator of Patronum, on here with us today, and he'll be doing a quick little demo of the tool later on. So I'd like to hand it over to Taylor, who's going to be talking to you guys about AFI.ai, which again is a backup archiving tool.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So AFI.ai is a cloud backup tool. So let's talk a little bit about the problem and why you might want something like this. So, Google themselves they do a great job at running data centers. So there's redundancy and all of that inside of the data center. If a data center is offline because of a earthquake or just an internet outage, that's not an issue, right? Google does a great job of handling that. This tool is really about having an external backup of that data that's in Google so that you can restore that data somewhere else or in different ways and have external control over those backups. So a long time ago, the second thing I ever learned about computers was it's not a backup unless it's offsite. It's just a copy. So if you keep it in the same building, it's just a copy, right? You have to have it somewhere else. And so there are scenarios where having an external backup can really save you. It also allows you to kind of get around some of Google's internal policies for offboarding and other things like that. One of the big ones is obviously creating a complete fault-tolerant backup system. So you can only go so far back with Google as far as restoring files, and you can't go back to certain points in time. With AFI, you can. You can also restore it somewhere else. And if you were in a situation where you lost control of your Google account, you could still have access to this backup and restore it somewhere else. So there are a few options out there for tools like this. AFI has really kind of stepped up for a few reasons. One is the speed at which they back up is 2 times faster than anybody else, period. It's very, very, very fast. They have a great back-end infrastructure. Restoring items is very quick. You also have very good integration with all the Google file types and other file types, so that you're able to save those files and back them up with all of the context around those, the edit history and all those things. Document IDs are all intact and things like that. So it's a very good and well-written system. So the other big thing that pops in here is with ransomware. So if someone were to get access to your Google admin account or take over, maybe you have a rogue admin or somebody loses a password, it's the worst case scenario. Unfortunately, if somebody else has control of your Google admin, at that point, Google doesn't know who's really in charge there, right? So having your information outside of Google can allow you to get back up and running faster instead of having to go through multiple steps with Google to try to regain access to that. You would have access to that important company data. And especially for companies that are running completely on Google, this can be very, very important. But you can go back to that last clean snapshot, restore it, and get back up and running very, very quickly. If you still have access, you can unencrypt things or whatever. Or if you do have to restore to somewhere else, you can restore to an external location or just download those files. So obviously they do a great job of having, all of these different, features. You can quickly kind of look through these. The flexibility and, the security that they have really is top notch. So glad to answer more questions about that when we get there, but I'll turn it over to Brandon. He's going to talk about Virtru a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. My name is Brandon Ferreira. I'm a customer success manager here at Upcurve, and Virtru is probably one of our most popular add-on or ancillary services that our customers use just because it's almost necessary and required for a lot of organizations, but it's also just a good tool to have in general. So what it is a encryption tool or a data protection tool that not including just Drive, but also other tools that you can connect to your workspace. So Salesforce, and sometimes people use Outlook or Microsoft. It's a hybrid environment. It protects your data from every standpoint. So that way, sensitive information can't leave the domain. And if it does, that you have some control over it. And that's going to come in a couple different formats that we'll see in the next slide. A lot of things internally are usually okay. So if you need to be HIPAA compliant, if you have some kind of financial compliance, then sending things internally to your coworker or something like that's not really going to be an issue. That's not a violation. When you start sending things outside of it to other organizations or to vendors, to customers, that kind of thing, that's when it can become a problem. And that's when you would get hit with a HIPAA violation. So there's not really a wonderful way in Google to remedy that. It does have confidential mode, but that's not really much. It's kind of a password. It's not really encrypting it. And then it also does not cover the end-to-end encryption. So with Virtue, when it leaves the server, it's not going to be seen by Google either. It hits Virtue server, it unlocks that message for your recipient, and then they can view it a lot more easily. We go to the next slide as well. We can kind of see how it works a little bit. So what happens is it's a plugin, but it's also a gateway. So if you're using Gmail, it's very easy to use. You have a toggle switch in your Gmail, and then that message will be encrypted in transit to the recipient. When the recipient receives it, they can click on it. It'll put them into a secure viewer where they can enter their credentials. So for example, if they're using Google Workspace, they'll just sign in with Google. They don't need to set up a new password, a new username, anything like that. And then it will show them the message in plain text right there. If they want to reply, that's great. They can do so securely. If they want to add any attachments, that's encrypted as well. And then when they send that back, it will check with Virtue server. It'll say, okay, here's the key to this. Is it going to be going to the right person? Do they have access to this? And then it lands in that user's mailbox so they can look at it again. This is a little bit different from Google's SMIME encryption as well, which is not really useful for a lot of organizations because you have to manage a key server. You have to have a key, the recipient has to have another key, you have to do the handshake, and then the encrypted data can go back and forth. Well, with using a tool like Virtue, they handle all those keys for you on their side. So they're doing the authenticating, they're checking to make sure everybody has access, and then it delivers the message. One of the coolest parts of it is the control aspect of it. So yes, it encrypts it, but what about after that? You need to be able to have consistent data protection, or persistent rather. So if I want somebody to have access now, but maybe I don't in the future, you're able to restrict that. So if you want somebody to have access to a file for a day or a month, or maybe just some day down the line, you say, I don't want them to have access at all anymore. You can just go into your console and turn it off. You can also see who is accessing files and emails. So you can see if it's been forwarded when it wasn't supposed to be. You can put a watermark on files or attachments so you can see who is the person that forwarded it. This all applies to Drive as well. So you can control who has access to Drive files for a limited amount of time and see who that's been shared with and so on and so forth. So oftentimes organizations are required to have some kind of encryption. Like I said, the biggest ones are going to be HIPAA and financial institutions, and this satisfies that. That gives you that extra layer that if you were to get audited, it would satisfy those requirements. So it's a really great tool, and they are expanding into other areas like GCP and third-party products as well, for things like I mentioned earlier, Salesforce. So that way you don't have to worry about data that's going from like your CRM to your email and vice versa. All of that is going to be covered under Virtue's data protection. So
yeah, and to Brandon's point, this is definitely one of our strongest partnerships and something that is very popular amongst our customers, especially if you're in a regulated industry or just want to have that safety net that your data is secure no matter where and who it's sent to.
Yeah, because the whole zero trust infrastructure that the world is going through, the architecture rather, it's becoming increasingly more important to make sure that you can see who has access to your data and that you're protecting it accordingly. And this definitely allows you to do that.
Thank you, Brandon. And we'll finish it off here with Patronum, which, as I mentioned, is an advanced admin management tool. This is a tool that if you talk to any admin who has it, it's a lifesaver for them. It allows you admins to create optimization and organizational audits and other various aspects. It's a really powerful tool. The acronym or the words we use is like a Swiss Army knife for Google Workspace. And Paul Lees, who is the creator of Patronum, is going to do a quick demo. But at a high level, really some of the high points of what Patronum can provide to you as an admin are onboarding, offboarding, contact sharing, signature management, all within one tool. A lot of Google customers we talk to have these things, but individual tools. So they're paying, X amount for signature management, X amount for some onboarding, X amount for contact sharing. with Patronum, you can get all that under one single SKU. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to Paul.
Thank you, Joe. So as Joe mentioned, you may notice from my accent, I'm not from the US. I'm actually based in Manchester in the UK. I've been in the Google Workspace industry for about 15 years, developed migration tools, single sign-on products, and now created Patronum, which, as Joe has mentioned, is really designed to help with the management of Google Workspace, from both onboarding, offboarding. Email signature management is one of our key solutions that quite a lot of small businesses purchase Patronum for, and also Drive management, Google Drive management. For the remainder of the session, I'll just do a very quick demo just to kind of cover a high level of the product. And so, as you can see here, this is Patronum. Everything that you see in the interface is being driven by the Google directory. So all the information here is inside the Google directory. We're drawing this organizational chart based on what Google uses or what Google calls the manager attribute. And we create this hierarchy based on that attribute in order to give you visibility of your users. You can also use the card view, which will display users in a traditional card view, and you can also perform a Google search. But from a Patronum perspective, if we look at the day-to-day management of users, typically organizations may want to do ad hoc requests. And so from Patronum, you can edit the Google profile, put information in there. We can also extend the Google schema to add additional information into the Google directory, information that can then be used later on in the application. Again, one of the things that we're seeing, which is quite common, is pronouns inside people's email signatures, as well as working hours. And so people, specifically in the UK, professional organizations are now moving to a 4-day week. And so in order to communicate that, they're putting these statements in email signatures. We can walk through this interface and show you the Google groups that Gareth is a member of. We can add Gareth to particular Google groups. We can have a look at the calendars that Gareth has access to, and then drill into those particular calendars and see who's got access, who's the owner, and also add additional people to that Google Calendar. We can also scroll through and have a look at Google Contacts. One of the features is contact sharing, so I can take a Google label and share that information with other individuals inside the organization. We've got access to view Gareth's files, so I can view here and have a look at Gareth's My Drive and scroll through and change the permissions. I can change the ownership of a Google file. I can copy Google files. I can make copies of these files. Everything that you could do as a user, you can do through Patronum. So instead of having to change Gareth's password, log in as Gareth, and go through the whole HR process, I can log in through to Patronum and impersonate Gareth and do the work on behalf of Gareth. Everything that we do is audited and logged, so there's no security issues. It's all audited inside our system, but also inside the Google system. One of the key features that we have, as I mentioned, is email signatures. Now, with Patronum, you can create a policy. If you wanted to explore how we can create policies, then you can have a chat with Joey and the team, and we'll book a longer session. But just to briefly show you how the email signatures look inside Patronum, we can see Gareth's direct email signature here. We can have a look at all of Gareth's signatures, different signatures for different brands inside the organization, and also email signatures for different send as addresses. So if Gareth was a member of the sales team and he was able to send as a member of the sales team, then he may want to have a different email signature. Maybe you are advertising or promoting a particular event. We can also have a look at the HTML of this particular email signature and really drill in and make that email signature pixel perfect. And then lastly, every single attribute and every single setting that you can modify from a Google Workspace perspective are available inside Patronum in the settings section. So we can have a look and modify Gareth's vacation responders. We can have a look at Gareth's labels and add additional labels. We can also go through and update any filters that Gareth has inside his Gmail. We can add email aliases. We can enable and disable POP and IMAP. And then lastly, which again is a common request, is delegate access. So if you need to get quick, immediate access to Gareth's inbox, or if Gareth needs quick access to somebody else's inbox, you can do this straight from our interface and just add different people into that particular environment. And so, as I mentioned, if there are any questions that you've got, then you can book a longer session. We can go into the details of how our policies work. We've got a Google Drive section, which allows you to see the sharing that is being performed inside your organization, to see who internally has access to files, but also more importantly, who externally has access to your files. So we can filter in and say, I'm interested in only the external people in the organization. And so here I can see a number of users that have got access to my data. And so I can drill into those users and find out why. And so with that, I'll hand back to Joey, and we can answer any questions.
Yeah, so Arthur, you had a couple of questions about how many, AFI and Virtru, kind of the same question for both. So with AFI, yes, you can selectively back up things. You can have different cycles on the backup there. So if you only wanted to have AFI licenses for certain people, or if you wanted to have different backup timing or policies for different organizational units, yes, you can do that with AFI. Same thing with Virtru. You don't have to have the encryption license, the Virtru license for every employee. You can have it for just some. So that kind of answers those. Let's see who else. Rex. Virtru is compatible with Gmail and Outlook by using the gateway. So typically what you would do is you would set up a gateway and use some trigger words or something like that. There are also some extensions that you can use in Outlook as well too. So there's a couple of different ways that you can make that work depending on what your goal is there. So we can dig into that. Does Patronum connect via API to services like Sage People? Paul, do you want to talk about third-party kind of roadmap stuff there?
Yeah, so from a connection perspective, anything that can connect to the Google directory, we can then ingest. So if your application, if it's a HR application and it's able to populate Google and those attributes are inside the Google directory, then we can then read those attributes in. So we do work with other third-party HR systems where they populate Google, and because our system reads the Google directory in real time, we can then take advantage of that. So there's no specific integration with our application, but because we're using the Google directory, inadvertently we are integrating with those particular applications.
Yes, Virtru can absolutely encrypt documents in Google Drive. So there's an entire system for that, and allows you a lot of flexibility. Even after you share the document, right, you can basically unshare that document and keep control over it, even though it's been shared out. It's a very incredible, powerful system that they have, just because you're able to maintain some of that control even after the time that you share it out.
Yeah, you could set an expiration date on it. There's a lot of powerful functions in the Virtru for Drive. And I would encourage everyone, if you see here, customer success at upcurvecloud.com, if you'd like to get a demo of any of these products, if you have questions, would like to dive a little bit deeper into any of them, please reach out to customer success at upcurvecloud.com, and we'll make sure to get you, attached to the appropriate team here, or just any questions in general about Workspace.
And we see a lot of familiar faces out there. If you know that myself or Brandon is your customer success manager, you can email us directly, or if you're unsure, just email customer success and we'll make sure we get the right person for you.
Thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope to bring more of these webinars throughout the year to keep you up to date on some of the newest tools and what's working out there, where we see some traction, what some of the other companies have seen success with, and we want to make sure to give you guys as much information as possible about how to utilize Workspace to optimize your environment.